All right, let's go. I want to talk about Trump. Trump, as you know, the market's now very rattled by this escalation or a re-escalation of the trade war, the tariffs that Trump is threatening to place on Chinese goods. And everybody's going crazy, and the zombies are selling the market down. But I want to talk about Trump and his comments, maybe his beliefs, I don't know, but certainly his comments, his rhetoric, his statements recently. And these are things he's been saying now for a period of time. And I want to focus in on them. Because Trump routinely talks about how we are getting ripped off by the Chinese. How the Chinese are taking our money. How we're losing, right? He's always saying we're losing to the Chinese. So there is this concept of loss. And that is flat out a false statement. Because what is happening here is an exchange. An exchange of money for goods. So the Chinese, yes, are getting paid dollars. Dollars which we create. The United States is the sovereign issuer of the US dollar. It's the monopolist when it comes to the dollar. We pay dollars to the Chinese and we get an equivalent amount of goods. In that equation, there is no loss. The Chinese get dollars, we get goods. Loss or getting ripped off would be a situation where, let's say, you pay for something and you get nothing or less in return. That is not what is going on here. Now, I don't know if this is Trump's actual belief. It could be that he is just using or painting a scenario to fire up his base, to get people to support him. You know, we're going into another presidential election cycle. He's looking for the vote from workers and the middle class. So to create this kind of scenario where, hey, they're stealing our jobs, they're stealing our money, we're losing out, we look like wimps, that gets people fired up. Those are emotional metaphors. People can get all riled up when they hear that, and he's very clever at painting those kind of pictures to manipulate people to get what he wants. But the situation as it exists, this idea that somehow we're getting ripped off, that somehow there is a loss, that's just absolutely not true. That's just completely false. We get goods, and by the way, those goods really define our standard of living. What describes a poor person or what describes a poor nation? It's not having anything. A poor individual, somebody who's truly poor, may not have a home, may not have clothes on their person, may not have food with any regularity. So the goods, the things we consume, really define our standard of living. What defines a poor country? Maybe no roads or infrastructure, no health care, lack of food, lack of basic things, basic needs. That would describe a poor country. So it's really the goods, the things that we consume that define our standard of living. There is no loss in the equation. To say that there is just flat out wrong. The Chinese get dollars in exchange for the goods which we receive. And by the way, China, with all its, everything that has achieved economically in the last 20 or 30 years, it's still a relatively poor country. If you look at the average yearly earnings of Chinese workers compared to the average worker here in the United States, there is still a huge disparity. So they are working for far less than what an American would earn, but we get the goods, the finished goods, which are high standard: electronics, computers, textiles, machines, lots of things that add to our standard of living. There is no loss in the equation, but he is painting it as somehow we are getting ripped off, somehow they're taking our dollars. That's another thing that is embodied in his statement, is this idea that we have to get those dollars back from China. that somehow China is the supplier of the dollars to the United States. And again, that is patently false. The United States, as I just said, is the sovereign issuer of the US dollar. We make the dollar. They might make the goods right now. We give them the dollars, we receive the goods. But this idea that we have to get those dollars back, that somehow we need those dollars as if there is just a finite quantity of dollars and the Chinese hold them and we need to get them back, otherwise financially the country, the United States, cannot go on and operate as it should. That's just completely wrong. That is completely wrong. Now I think he understands this. I would hope he understands this. And I think he's using this language to fire up his base and to get people to support him, you know, blue collar and workers, and you know, hey, they're ripping us off, they're taking our money, they're taking your jobs. We're getting the short end of the stick, but it's absolutely not true. It's absolutely not true. Now, he might think it's better that we make the goods here, and I've said, and this is why I said this whole trade war nonsense, that's really what it is. It's nonsense. Because it's not like the wealth goes out into outer space somehow and the world has now lost that wealth. It's just a redistribution. What it would mean, if you take it to its logical conclusion, is that the United States gets less goods and more income, right? Because now we'll be importing less from China, but the incomes will rise here because we'll be making it here. And on the other side, the Chinese will get less income but have more goods for their own people. So it's just a redistribution of the arrangement that exists right now. Right now we get more goods and the income flows to Chinese workers, and the Chinese people have less goods, right, but they have more income. But that just gets redistributed around. Eventually the equation balances out. If we're producing the goods here, we'll eventually have the same quantity of goods. You might have a period of inflation first or higher prices because we'll have to replace those lost goods from China either by paying tariffs or by paying a higher cost to have it produced here. But eventually, and I've been talking about this, if you look at the last year since the tariffs have been applied, total industrial capacity utilization in the United States has gone up by a full percentage point to 78, a little bit over 78%. But that's still nowhere near where it was in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s when capacity utilization in the United States was like 90%. We still have a long way to go. And I also mentioned in a previous video that business investment, non-residential fixed investment, up $200 billion in the last year since the tariffs were applied. So you're seeing the impact of the tariffs where now it's incentivizing investment here in the United States, increase in productive capacity. That's what it's supposed to do. So he probably has that in mind, and that's his goal, to have the stuff made here, and that would entail higher levels of employment and higher incomes. That's all good. Those are not negative things for the economy. In the short term, maybe there's some disruption, maybe there's a little inflation. So far, we haven't really seen much of that. I mean, the real inflation has come from the Fed since late 2015 when it started raising interest rates until the beginning of this year when it stopped. And I've said many times that rate hikes equate to price increases because the cost of credit is reflected in the cost of all goods and services. So when the Fed raises interest rates, it raises the general price level across the board. That's a whole separate matter. That has nothing to do with the tariffs, but the tariffs themselves probably also factor into a higher price level. So we may feel that for a while. And yes, there may be a small drag on GDP. But at the same time, you cannot ignore the fact that other components of GDP are responding positively. Business investment going up, incomes going up. Very important. So the problem is that everybody is looking at one side of the equation right now. Oh my God, there's going to be a trade war. And just, that phrase, a trade war, it has the word war in it. And war is bad. So it makes everybody think it's bad. Trade war. And so the reaction. Markets are highly emotional. They are pushed around by millions and millions of people who cannot control their emotion. What is it I talk about all the time on these videos? Controlling emotion, mental game. That is the 0.000000001% of all investors. Most people can't do it. I've had a lot of people, they quit. They can't handle the stress. They can't handle when things get difficult. They're in the constant search for the system fairy, so that's never going to happen to them. They believe there's something out there that's going to make this game so easy and so stress-free. But I'm getting off topic here. I wanted to talk about Trump and the way he has been kind of framing this as a loss. There is no loss. There is an exchange. Money for goods. If I pay for a TV set, the Chinese get the money, whatever it is, $400, whatever. I just bought a TV set the other day, one of 55-inch. They get the $400, I got a TV set. Nobody lost in that equation. In fact, I think I came out ahead because that's a damn cheap price for a really nice TV set. That's how it worked. Now, if I paid $400 and I got nothing, or I got a 16-inch TV set when I was promised a 55-inch, yeah, then that's a loss, and they were ripping me off, and there's a problem. But nobody's getting ripped off, and there isn't any loss.